o'clock p.m. And this is the Tillamook County Budget Committee meeting. This will be the fourth time we have met in the last couple of months. The first three being a 3-day period where we hear the budget requests and talk about where we might be short or have a surplus. And then we give direction to the county treasurer to go back and make some adjustments and come back to us with a balanced budget, or at least a proposed balanced budget. We also, during the day, will have a discussion about our compensation committee, which met recently, and I think we've all had maybe separate discussions with Aaron Frost, who is the HR person for the county presently. And then we'll have go through the agenda, which will discuss the budget in total. Certainly have an opportunity for anyone to offer comments to the budget committee. And then at the end, if we're all in agreement, we will approve the budget for the next fiscal year. And I believe we usually set our tax levies as well. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think maybe our treasurer will have them or can put them on the screen. So I'll ask, is there any general questions from anyone before we start down the agenda? Okay, not hearing any. Let me turn it over to the budget, the treasurer, and she will offer a summary of, of our budget, and also a budget message for the upcoming fiscal year, which begins July 1. So, Sean, take it away, and if you would speak loudly and clearly, I think you're in the room, and it doesn't necessarily pick up as much as if you had a different type of microphone, but go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Doug. And yeah, I did get a text from someone listening that I needed to speak up. So I had emailed you at the end of April the updated budget spreadsheets. It still showed the general fund out of balance by a little over $200,000. Some of the highlights, I had to increase personal services in the BOC for the one part-time employee. I'm unable to justify that expense out of the emergency management grant. I did increase recording fees by $30,000. HR reduced their contracted services by $30,000. Updated IS in personal services by almost 13 to reflect open positions and budgeting for those positions, personal services such as healthcare. I increased the marijuana tax and the liquor tax based on past revenue. I took former Commissioner Bartline's advice and increased the property tax by $280,000. I did increase the transfer out to the computer reserve by $100,000. To account for the wage and comp studies that we're going through right now, I did increase the transfer out to revenue stabilization by an additional $500,000, so that would total $1 million transfer out. I increased the transfer out to the building reserve after discussions with Rachel, and I reduced the transfer out of the general fund to community corrections by $40,000. Due to personnel changes, I increased personal services in justice court to account for an open position. Same in juvenile. After comment from Commissioner Scar, I did reduce one road deputy out of the sheriff criminal side and updated the OS2 to a records clerk full-time. I increased fuel based on inflation and what we've been seeing lately by $15,000, and I removed the vehicle cost from capital for the Raptor, as that will hopefully all be funded out of Title III funds. I updated the personal services, adding a 0.25 for a justifiable employee cost in emergency management. I increased beginning fund balance in mitigation. TLT facilities, I moved the transfer out of 7105 into 98, and I have to create a jail code to reflect an actual transfer out and transfer in. Computer reserve increased the transfer in to $300,000. Vehicle reserve, I reduced the vehicle requests by 3, I believe it was. As I said, community corrections, I removed the transfer from the general fund, and I increased revenue stabilization, total transfer to $1 million. And those were changes that I had made. So if you'd like, I will read the budget message next. Tillamook County Annual Budget Message, Fiscal Year 2022-2023, May 11th, 2022. members of the Budget Committee, Board of County Commissioners, and Tillamook County citizens. The fiscal year 2022-2023 proposed budget. As budget officer, I present the draft approved budget portraying the expected financial performance of Tillamook County for fiscal year 2022-2023. The budget format is consistent with that of previous years, and all funds are presented as balanced, almost, between revenues and expenditures as required by Oregon Revised Statutes Chapter 294. Budget, purpose, structure, and key accounting principles. The budget is a policy document which establishes the operational plan for delivering programs and services to county residents. With the adoption of the budget, the Board of County Commissioners establishes the funding priorities for the upcoming year and strategic direction into the future. Tillamook County recognizes the importance of continuing to live within our means, striving for increased productivity and use of innovation in our efforts to operate and maintain services to our citizens. The presented budget includes 3 types of funds. General fund is the county's main operating fund and is appropriated at various department levels. Special revenue funds. There are 44 dedicated and other funds that are budgeted separately from the general fund and cannot be used for general purposes. The dedicated and other funds comprise of $86,421,160, or 65.36% of the total budget, and range from $13.6 million in Health and Human Services Fund to $19,500 Juvenile Trust. Debt service funds. The county currently has 3 debt service funds. Library debt service funded the construction of the main library at Stillwell on 3rd Street, the road debt service that funds road repairs, culvert replacements, and bridge maintenance, and the general fund debt service payment for the Justice Facility roof and energy energy improvements. Expenditures are appropriated by categories. Personal services, which consists of the county's workforce costs, materials and services, and capital outlay for projects and purchases with a useful life expectancy greater than 1 year and a cost of over $5,000. Tillamook County uses the cash basis of accounting for all budgets. Revenues are recorded at the time they are received, and expenditures are accounted for when paid. Budget preparation. This year's budget preparation included a multitude of new factors and a fresh set of unknowns relating to the ongoing pandemic and its economic impacts. With the establishment and development of several new funds, as well as the recently released funding restrictions in federal funding, it is reasonable to expect that mid-year adjustments to the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget will be necessary. Budget summary. The total proposed Tillamook County budget for fiscal year 2022-2023 is $132,217,800. The adopted budget for fiscal year 2021-2022 currently totals $113,814,160. A supplemental budget for fiscal year 2021-2022, increasing appropriations and expenses, will be proposed for adoption in June of 2022. This supplemental budget will increase revenues and expenditures $5,954,000. This is a total overall increase of $12,449,640, or 9.42%. With the need to provide for balanced budgets, revenues are truly the driving factor in budget preparation. The current state of the economy has made for many unknowns surrounding revenue for fiscal year 2022-2023. Revenues were forecasted with the help of departmental management and their detailed observations of current operating activities, as well as through discussions with contacts at various state-level agencies. Major revenues and abbreviated descriptions of the current budgeted figures for the county are property taxes. 2022-2023 property tax revenues are currently budgeted at $7,920,000 at a projected 93% collection rate for the proposed fiscal year. State forest timber revenue is budgeted at $4,100,000, down from $4,700,000 in fiscal year 2021-2022. These revenues are generated from the timber grown and harvested by the Oregon Department of Forestry and are heavily influenced by economic factors. Timber revenue makes up approximately 21.3% of the county's general fund operating revenue and continues to be a primary driver in the general fund budget. Monitoring will be necessary to anticipate budgetary adjustments. Federal and state special revenue funding is budgeted to reflect a dip below 2021-2022 numbers due to the receipt of one-time ARPA funds. All other recurring state and federal sources show relatively consistent funding. And in my message, there's, a comparison chart. A comparison chart of both general fund and special revenue fund budget revenues by type for fiscal year 2021, 2022, and 2022, 2023 is included for comparison. Expenditures. The county's workforce is the principal influencing component of county expenditures, with 282.1 full-time employees in the proposed budget for fiscal year 2022-2023, accounting for 26% of the total budget. The pandemic has continued to require changes, and like many other organizations, Tillamook County and our employees improvised where needed, maintained our focus to provide services to our community, and used this challenging time to improve our operations and services. Factors in expenditure increases and decreases include salaries. The proposed budget recognizes the challenges our workforce is facing and continues the pursuit of investing in our greatest asset, our employees. In fiscal year 2022-2023, funding is included for a 3% cost of living adjustment for all employees. Prioritization of ensuring fair and competitive personnel compensation is critical to retaining our most valuable assets, our Tillamook County employees. Benefits. CIS health insurance premiums will increase 5% effective January 1, 2023. This increase is included in the proposed budget. Another benefit to employees is the county retirement plan, which the county is committed to funding at appropriate levels. To continue to fund the plan, the county will contribute 35% of salaries to the retirement plan. Capital outlay. All capital outlay purchases and projections that have been started during fiscal year 2021-2022 will carry over to fiscal year 2022-2023 for completion. Conclusion. In the planning or execution of any budget, there is a constant need to adjust and respond to change in the environment outside of the annual budget cycle. The planning for this budget attempted to anticipate consequences, current and projected, of economic factors as well as state and federal funding changes. Adjustments may be made as the fiscal year progresses. The Budget Committee has been noticed as required by ORS 294.31135. The Budget Committee reviews the proposed budget and receives the budget message. Following budget approval by the Budget Committee, another public hearing is held. A budget summary and notice of hearing are published prior to the hearing, subject to strict legal requirements as to the time and method of publication. Excuse me. The Board of County Commissioners is scheduled to adopt the county budget at a public hearing on June 22nd, 2022 at 10:35 a.m. After hearing testimony, the Commissioners may adjust the budget within certain parameters or adopt the approved budget presented to them by the Budget Committee. I appreciate and acknowledge the Board of County Commissioners, Budget Committee members, elected officials, department heads, and county staff who have contributed to the preparation of this year's budget. Respectfully submitted, Sean Blanchard, County Treasurer, Budget Officer.
Do you see them? Oh, they're not showing on your computer.
Okay, can everyone hear me now? I had a little trouble here. I think it's working. All right, thank you. Thank you, Sean. Before we go down, let me ask if there are any general questions regarding the budget message from the Budget Committee. We have time on the agenda to hear from others in a few minutes, but let me ask the other five if any of you would care to ask a question.
So I see David has his hand up.
Yes, Commissioner Yamamoto, go ahead.
Thank you. So Sean, even with all of those adjustments to the budget that you made, I take it we are still roughly $200,000 out of budget?
Yes, in the general fund. All special revenue funds are balanced.
Okay, but all of the special revenue funds are balanced?
Correct.
Okay, so it's just that's not a bad situation. $200,000 out of a $132 million budget. It's not bad. So again, I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Any other questions from any of the Budget Committee of our County Treasurer? Okay, well, we'll have have an opportunity to hear from anyone who is online or in the room, any citizen in a few minutes, and also we'll have a discussion then about how do we balance the budget and how do we come up with $209,950 according to her notes. So let's turn now to the compensation board. And I didn't see Erin Frost online, but perhaps she's there. But let me explain what the compensation board is for those who may not know. It's the three lay people on this committee would be Mayor Scott and former Commissioner Bill Bartline and myself. And we meet annually, sometimes more, but usually following the first round of budget hearings. And we look at primarily elected officials, and we're presented with some statistics and background in most cases, meaning what are other comparable positions paying throughout Oregon and maybe even elsewhere. For example, an elected treasurer would make a certain amount of money in Tillamook County. Is that compensation fair and adequate and comparable to what someone with similar responsibilities, sometimes in elected positions, sometimes not, in other counties? And so we go through that exercise every year and then find if we're underpaying our people, or in some cases we appear to be okay, and make some judgments and recommendations that come back to the full budget committee. I know separately from all of that, the county's HR people, which happens to be under contract with an outside firm, has done a rather comprehensive study of salaries and wages across the county. And I don't think that's under the purview of the budget committee to deal with all that. The commission will deal with that in due time. And I have read the material that was presented to us, and it's, in my opinion, having been on this committee now for a number of years, it's one of the better summaries and studies that I have seen. And as all of you know, we, the budget committee, the compensation committee, has been after the county commission to make this a higher priority and return some equity in some areas that may have lost some balance over the years. I think that study is a pretty good start, and it's quite comprehensive. But let's return back to the compensation board and what we're charged with doing, which is elected officials. So on the agenda, we want to hear from Erin Frost. So Erin, are you on? I don't see you by name, but perhaps you're under some number or something.
She's on there.
That's her.
Yes, hello, I am here. I'm on the call-in number.
Calling them. Okay, very good. Well, it sounds like you're so. Why don't you give the board and others who are on the our call or our website today, summary of what you've done and perhaps the recommendations, at least as they pertain to the elected officials, and then we'll fold that into our decisions down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have gone through, and myself and Heather Wall is both from HR&E Consulting, and we are contracted for the county to provide HR services. But for this particular project, we looked at elected officials' compensation, and we created a methodology that we're recommending that the county adopts moving forward. But essentially, what we did is we looked at every county within the state of Oregon, and we applied weighted categories for each county. And the categories that we looked at were cost of living, we looked at population, geographic location, to assess true comparators for the county of Tillamook. And in the past, just to give a little history, over the last couple years at least, the county has looked primarily at population as being the category of comparison, and so we wanted to extend beyond that to identify who those comparators were. Once we did that, we pulled data from each of the counties for each elected official position, and we went ahead and proposed updates to We also dropped the highest and the lowest just to, once again, look for those true comparators. And from that, we came up with some recommendations. The first being that, and I don't know, do you want me to go through the recommendations right now? Would that be helpful?
Yes, please do. Might as well get it on the record, and then we'll do something official in a little bit.
Okay. And I'll just say too that this afternoon, we're meeting with the board to review the non-represented compensation study and recommendations, and so I'll go into more detail during that time as well, but this is kind of a summary of that work also. From there, we noticed that the sheriff was the position that needed to be adjusted. We also looked at, in addition to market pay, we looked at internal equity as it relates to compression. So for positions that are elected, that have positions who report to them, we looked at what their current pay was and subsequently looked at the recommendations that we're making for the non-represented compensation study to avoid any future compression issues, as we know that's been an ongoing risk that we've mitigated. So the sheriff...
Aaron, let me interrupt you just for a second. You use the word compression, and I think most of us understand what that is, but there may be people who are online who do not. Would you take a moment and explain what compression is when you're looking at data as we are today?
Absolutely, thank you for that. So pay compression is we want to ensure that positions who are reporting to other positions, in most cases, in a general sense, there is what we call a spread. So a differentiation between pay bands, so pay ranges, so that somebody who is reporting to somebody else isn't making the exact same amount. If there is actually acknowledgement that somebody who is supervising a group or other employees, there is a differentiation in pay there. And so I think a good example of that is looking at the Justice Center positions. And so even though the sergeant, lieutenant, undersheriff, sheriff, they're not all elected positions, the only elected is the sheriff. We looked at all the other positions within the sheriff's office to ensure that there was enough spread between the individual pay ranges and made recommendations accordingly. The other recommendation that we have is we know that AFSCME is going to be receiving a cost of living increase as is the Teamsters, and typically what we see is that the non-represented positions also receive a cost of living increase roughly in line with represented positions cost of living increase. And so with the assumption that the board would also provide that cost of living increase to non-represented positions, we're making the recommendation that you also extend that cost of living increase to elected officials, again, to avoid further compression issues.
And that amount then is the 3%, correct?
Correct. I would recommend 3%, again, to avoid further compression issues.
Okay, so does everyone have the printout that you prepared, the spreadsheet, I think about almost 2 weeks ago? Has that been made available to the budget committee? I have my copy, but do we all have that?
I don't know that everyone has that.
Go ahead.
The budget committee, or the three on the budget committee have it.
So the commissioners don't necessarily have it? Okay.
I can
So-
go ahead and send that.
Yeah, I think you probably should. So what the committee then will do is when we get to the part of our agenda where we actually ask for motions and voting, we would then vote for your recommendation of 3% then for non-elected. And then there are a couple of exceptions, as you pointed out, the sheriff. Would we want to deal with that separately or as one package, or what would be the best way forward on that?
My recommendation
Okay, was the sheriff then the only one that had something in excess of the 3%? I'm trying to see if that's accurate. Is that a good statement?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So then let me ask first of all, the budget committee, do you have questions now of Ms. Frost with respect to what she just said, and also on the elected officials, of which 3 of them are on this committee as well?
Yeah, it's difficult to make any kind of a determination without seeing the spreadsheet. So Aaron, if you can send that spreadsheet to the 3 commissioners, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yes, I will do that. You'll have it here shortly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments of Aaron on this? And then, as I mentioned earlier, separately, there's an extensive amount of work on other positions, especially executive service or senior management throughout the county. And I believe she and the county commission will deal with that separately from what we're asked to do as the compensation committee.
Correct.
So let's ask Aaron one question, if I may, about that.
Yeah, please do.
So Aaron, so you are recommending a 3% cost of living increase to electeds. Would you also suggest that we do that for the non-represented and executive pay table people?
Yes, that is correct, and I believe you'll see that in the calculations that I sent over yesterday. But yes, correct. I am recommending a cost of living adjustment for non-represented and executive service.
So another question, this one for Sean. Sean, have you worked that 3% into our budget?
Yes, it's already in there.
Okay, that's a good thing. Okay, perfect.
So the 3% is in the budget, and with that calculation, then the general fund is almost 210,000 out of balance currently.
Yes.
That's where we are with respect to that. Now, did you? This is a fairly minor item, but Sean, did you also look at the recommendation for the sheriff, because there's an adjustment there of roughly it's close to $16,000, which is more like the percent is 7. No, let's see here.
Just do 8.
I don't know what the percentage is, but it's considerably more than 3. That's the single market adjustment that is being recommended to us.
Correct.
So do your calculations then, Sean, putting the general fund out of balance by the almost 210,000, does that include the full adjustment for the sheriff?
No, it does not.
Okay, so if you add that in, then the number is probably closer to 220,000. Would that be a fair statement?
That would be a fair statement, Doug.
Okay, so why don't you take that down to the dollar, if you would, while we're visiting and talking here, and we'll consider that at the end of the meeting. If that's the wishes of the committee, then we would direct that the 3% plus the adjustment for the sheriff's position be adopted.
Okay.
Assuming we can find $220,000 between now and the end of the meeting.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes, please.
just to sort of pontificate for a moment on electeds and the 3% increase, as well as the potential adjustment to the sheriff, and looking at, I know in the past there has been concern from employees and the public when electeds are adjusted. And I think what's important to remember is that in our particular form of government, many of our electeds are acting as department heads. And that in the interest of having folks who come into this with skills and abilities and talents to do the very important work of leading departments, you have to be paying a competitive wage also for elected folks. So it's just, I know that it's always an uncomfortable conversation. Those of us who are elected typically go into this because we wanted to do good things for our communities, and in the past electeds have declined COLAs when they were offered, and I don't know if there's been an offer for increases that's been declined. but it's a touchy conversation, and I just want to surface it. Sometimes we have to, rip the Band-Aid off and talk about the things that make people uncomfortable, and I feel like this is one of them. And I want to say, having been on the budget committee and the compensation committee prior to being elected myself, I know these are difficult conversations. I know that the budget committee has consistently pressed for our electeds to make sure that we do stay up with the market as best we can, so that we can continue to encourage and entice the most talented people to lead our county. So just kind of want to put that out there, so that as we come back to this at some point where decisions will be made, there is an awareness that we're all thinking about this is not about electeds that want to line their pockets. This is about staying up with what will draw talented people to lead our county. So thank you for letting me just express a little opinion.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, you are quite right in what you said. And as I said, I've been on this committee now for a number of years, and each and every year, I believe we've concluded that the commissioners should be compensated somewhat more than they are, for the simple reason that the three of you supervise people who are making 10 or 15 or something, almost $20,000 more than you are. And by any academic analyzing of competitive wages and salary structures and all, that's not how it's supposed to work. Theoretically, if you go back to business school or wherever you learned all this stuff, there should be roughly between 10 and maybe as much as 15% from someone who earns X amount of dollars above those people he supervises, and that applies on down the line. But having said all that, it is what it is. And yes, the compensation committee has recommended increases for elected officials and the county commission in particular a number of times, and they were declined in several cases, and that gave rise to further compression issues. And then there was a year where there was a 5% that went through, and I think former Commissioner Bartolini will tell you that he had a couple of bad days following that, as I recall. Correct, Commissioner?
Oh, that's correct. I was told in no uncertain terms that I shouldn't be getting a raise and I should quit. I should resign.
Well, I don't know how you do this and keep equity and things in balance without somebody being unhappy. That's just the way it is in public life. And I think Commissioner Scar said it very well, that when people do think about running for public office, particularly where it's full-time, that is part of the job, and it's part of any choice that one makes to be employed somewhere, is how much are you compensated. And in this world, we generally get what we pay for. So I'll just leave it at that. At the end of the meeting, we will then consider a 3% increase across the board for elected officials, and a bit more adjustment as has been set forth by the consultant for the sheriff's position. So we'll make that a separate motion when the time comes at the end of our meeting today. So, if anything else, and let me go back to Ms. Frost. Do you have anything else you want to bring forward with regard to compensation, particularly for elected officials?
I just want to concur with what Commissioner Scar shared as well, and it's really important that we do take that holistic approach, in my opinion, to ensure that, compression, pay compression issues don't compound over the years, and so that you can, in the future, entice folks to run for these elected positions, and that's really the only thing I would add, but I'm open to other questions as well.
Any questions for Ms. Frost? Well, thank you very much. And as I said, of the material that I've seen over the years, this is among the very best and the most comprehensive, particularly when you take it through the entire county staff of 250 positions, and recognizing some are in bargaining units, but others, I think this is a very thorough and complete analysis, and I think the board will find that very, very useful when it comes time to look at everybody's compensation. Okay, thank you. Let's go down now to number 4, county departments and other funded agencies, and let's make that non-general fund as well as general fund. So is there anything you would like to say to the committee? Okay, going once? Going twice? You can always speak up before we're done. We'll ask one more time, but this would be a good time if you're unhappy with what the treasurer has presented, or you have something that we don't know about. Now would be the time to bring that forward. Okay, I don't hear any, so let's move along. Let's go to the public now. Is there anyone in the public who is online listening or in the room who would care to address the budget committee with respect to what you've heard so far and what is contemplated for the next fiscal period?
Doug, we do have one person from the public in the room that would like to speak.
Go ahead. I didn't hear that too clearly.
We do have one. We do have one person from the public that would like to speak.
Okay, go ahead and identify yourself, please.
Yeah, do you just want to stand there so you're close to the speaker? Or?
My name is Tilda Jones. I'm from the Tillamook Bay Flood Improvement District. I have a clarification question. Is the two in the emergency management budget, is the 0.25 employee the continued services of Gordon McCraw?
I have the point.
As treasurer, can you answer that, Sean, please?
I can. That is actually a 0.25 of Under Sheriff Matt Kelly. I can justify his wages. I can't justify Gordon's because he doesn't even live in the county. And my grant guru and I, we went through it and tried to find something, and I could not justify the 0.25 out of the emergency management grant, which is why all of his wages were put into, the BOC's budget.
So it is in the budget.
It is in the BOC's budget, yes.
BOC?
Board of County
Oh,
Commissioners.
the commissioner's
For Matt
budget.
Kelly.
Pardon me?
Okay.
But for Matt Kelly.
No, for Gordon.
Oh, it is. I thought you said Matt Kelly.
Matt Kelly's the 0.25 in emergency management.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Gordon's is in the Board of County Commissioners 01100 budget.
Okay. I submitted, and that works. I gave Sean some more written comments, further written comments from the Tillamook Bay Flood Improvement District in support of Gordon's unique needed services for people in the flood zone. Their number one priority being advance notice to get their plans in place and their vehicles moved and whatnot. And in the budget, you see $4,000, and that's every year since 2003. The Tillamook Bay Flood Improvement District has contributed $4,000 from taxing themselves to be used to maintain the gauges that NOAA uses and that Gordon uses, because as I said, it is a priority to have accurate advance notice of floods, of emergencies, of events. So thank you for including Gordon in the commissioner's budget.
Okay, thank you, Tilda. So as I understand it then, let me be sure I understand this, the position that Gordon offers as a weather person, I guess you'd say, is under the Board of Commissioners, and that's a 0.25. And then the emergency manager itself includes a sworn deputy at 0.25 plus the emergency manager. And I don't have the full budget in front of me, but is that accurate then, Sean?
Pretty much, as a part-time retiree hire, we don't actually count a 0.25 FTE, so the funds are in there for a part-time. The 0.25, it doesn't apply. But the 40,000, that's what I put in for Gordon in the BOC, and then the 0.25 of Under Sheriff Matt Kelly's salaries is in the emergency management, along with the 1.0 for Randy Thorpe.
Okay, so is everyone clear on that, that a bit of shifting of funds in the source of the funds or the department, but it sounds like what was requested is there, at least in part.
So I think Commissioner Bartline has his hand up, or, excuse
Oh,
me,
I'm
Floor.
sorry, I see it right in front of me, yes, please go ahead, Commissioner.
I'm just questioning the need for a weatherman for the county. As a taxpayer, you can get that on your cell phone. And if you go back to the 60s when my dad had Coast Tire Shop, we'd just get a call, or people knew when it was going to flood and started putting things up. One of the car dealers down there in that neighborhood, who shall go unnamed, said he never lost a car he didn't want to lose. So there was, when it's coming up, you can read the river gauge. So why are we paying $40,000 to get a weather report that you've got on your cell phone? I just don't understand it.
May I comment? Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, offer your response, please, and then we'll talk about it.
Mr. Bartline, that the weather reports on the phone are not accurate enough or timely enough. They're delayed, and so it's a delayed report. We get advance reports from Gordon, and two, the people in the flood zone don't have time to be watching their computers and their phones and to get delayed information when they need to be doing their preparedness, getting their plans in place. And three, the infrastructure changes in North 101 in the flood zone has changed the flood patterns. They aren't anything like they were historically. And so with specific reports, advance notice from Gordon, and he's the only person in the state that can do this, we are able to minimize flood damages. We are able to report exactly to each property owner what they can expect and when by the height of the floods in the Wilson River.
Other comments with respect to this issue?
I see Commissioner Scar has her hand
Yeah.
up.
May I ask, and I'm not sure who may know the answer to this, but is part of that 40,000 also Gordon's backing up our current emergency manager when he is out, or is this 40,000 specifically to get a weather report?
It is strictly for, I don't know how you justify having an emergency manager out of county. I couldn't find any.
So I guess I'm questioning, so the 40,000 was originally in somebody's budget somewhere for Gordon, and what was the justification on that?
So previously it was in the emergency management when he was the emergency manager. When he retired and came back, it's been paid out of the BOCs.
May I comment on the out-of-county question?
No, I think Bill's saying.
Yes, go ahead, and then we'll go back to others on the committee, but go ahead, Tilda, please.
Gordon is within a few hours of Tillamook, and he can be here when to assist and in place of our emergency manager, who has no flood experience whatsoever, and we think it's only fair that the new emergency manager have gain local knowledge as fast as they can, and Gordon has that knowledge. So I listened to the commissioners paying salaries for people in Tennessee and whatnot, and Gordon's within a few hours, a couple hours, Lebanon, Oregon, of being here as needed in emergencies.
Any other comments from anyone on the committee, and then I'll offer an observation.
I see Mary
Mary
Faith.
Faith's hands up.
Yes, Mary Faith, please. Commissioner Bell?
Thank you. Well, Tilda, I'll repeat myself and say that we're not going to make personnel decisions in this meeting. This is a budget meeting and we won't be making personnel decisions here. But in the last budget hearing, what we talked about was having the Randy Thorpe in the full-time position and the additional quarter-time position that the funding from the Emergency Management Office provides us. So what I hear Sean saying she did is she's added 2 quarter-time positions rather than the 1, and I think she and I will probably want to circle back and talk about that, because I don't think we can justify 2 quarter-time positions either. I think we can justify 1 quarter-time position. So I don't think this conversation is quite finished, and maybe we hashed out in this meeting or maybe not, but the idea for Gordon currently is that, yes, he's providing weather service, which is great. It's, you know, Tilda, I agree with you completely that it's important. It is important. The flood prediction weather service is important. I don't agree with you completely that Gordon's the only person who can do it. And what Gordon has been doing is providing the training for Randy and also the backup for Randy's if he's ill or if he's out of town, which he is right now. If you know, he has a vacation, that position needs to have someone who is available to back it up, and that's what Gordon is doing for us now, which is, it's definitely a value. So I don't think this this issue is settled. We still need to find our way through with that quarter-time funded position.
Commissioner Yamamoto?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would have to disagree with Commissioner Bell. We do not need to spend $40,000 of taxpayer money for a weatherman. You can go to the National Weather Service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and pick up all the very latest information, including river gauges. I just, and this is something that we're going to hopefully be doing today, is balancing the budget. $200,000 out of balance. $40,000 is almost a quarter of that. So I can't see how we can make personnel decisions later on if we don't have the money in the budget. So I just think we are going to be making a decision today.
Chairman Doug?
Let me offer my view on this as well. I agree with basically everything that's been said, and I'm thinking back, I've been fishing the rivers in Tillamook County probably for 50 plus years, and the way I would decide whether to come down this way when I lived in the valley, come down here or not, was simply go to the River Forecast Center, and if the Wilson River was between 5.5 and 7.2 feet, you called in sick and went fishing. And it's been that way as long as I can remember, because that's when the river is steelhead green. And when it gets above 7.2 and is rising, then it's going to flood. And I think that people who live here and have been here for generations know that better than anybody in the state of Oregon, and they do what they have to do to make things work for them and their property, their farms, and so on. So I'm looking at $250,000 out of balance as well, and this $40,000 I think would take care of a good share of that as we work through this. So I can't see having a weatherman under these circumstances, and that's just my 1/6 of this committee. I also think there are significantly improved alternatives to what there was even a few years ago. you know, most of us carry a smartphone, and you truly can localize that if you have the right apps on your phone. You can localize it down almost to the zip code. So that's my comments on this. Anything else on that subject? And we'll give Tilda the last word, but then we're going to move on, and we'll take this up again when we make an attempt to balance the budget. Tilda?
Thank you. I am relaying to you the request of the people that are in the flood zone. What helps them get the fastest information to respond to coming floods. Their number one request is Gordon's weather reports to us. So it's the people that are being flooded are requesting this position. Thank you.
Okay, fair enough, thank you. Okay, let's move on down the agenda now, unless there's anyone else from the public. I'll make a last call for that. Is there anyone who is not affiliated with Tillamook County as a staff person or consultant that would care to offer remarks or advice or questions to this committee? Okay, I don't see any hands and I don't hear anyone, so next on the agenda then is our committee deliberations. We are currently, before we started the discussions on compensation, we were $209,950 out of balance on the general fund, and it was pointed out all the special funds are currently in balance, as they usually are. So not an issue with special funds, we're talking general fund, and we need to come up with roughly $250,000 after the sheriff. And Sean, did you calculate the sheriff's need in other words, can you give us a pretty accurate number of where we are with the adjustment, assuming we adopt that was recommended by the HR folks?
It'd be $215,700.
215,700.
Yep.
Okay, $216,000. Okay, so let's go to the individual committee members in any order. We need to come up with $250,000, which I will say for everyone's information is considerably less than this committee has had to deal with in previous years. I can remember when it was in the 7 figures and it became a little bit tense and difficult, and the issue of layoffs was taken up and those kinds of things. This year we don't have that issue before us. However, I think there are some longer term issues, but not something we have to consider today. So how would you like to start on giving direction to the county treasurer to come up with about $215,000? Commissioner Starr.
Thank you. So I would like to start by circling back to the emergency management conversation and suggest that we approve an emergency management budget with 1.25 FTE in it. No further discussion needed in this forum to determine who is inside that 1.25 FTE. That would be a personnel decision and one that does not need to be made by this committee, but I think this committee can, based on what I've heard, I think agree probably that the extra $40,000 will not be needed to be applied to that budget, but rather keep it at the 1.25. So that's where I would begin, which removes the $40,000. The second thing that I think we want to think about is we have so many vacant positions. Is there a way, and I don't know if Sean's already accounted for that in here in some way. If not, can we account for that in some way, whether we take a look at departments with vacant positions, looking as we sit here in May, what are the chances that 100% of those positions will be filled and wages paid beginning on July 1? I just don't think that's a reality, and I'm not sure how we can factor for that. So I guess I would ask that question of the treasurer. I don't want to have to go through department by department and cut positions or pieces of positions, or it gets very crazy. Is there a way we can factor that and add that, help us, let us use that to help balance the budget?
So Commissioner Scar, this is Sean. There is 1.25 budgeted in emergency management. What I'm saying is I'm having a hard time justifying the one expense, aligning it with the grant to be able to pay for those wages. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense, but I think that's not something we have to decide in this particular forum. I think that there's an opportunity, working with liaison for the emergency management department, to determine what expenses are allowable and to do that in a different forum than here.
Okay.
What we are approving for the budget is a 1.25, and then we will need to determine what will fit into that, and we have to go from there. So that's my thought on that.
All right, I'm clear on that one. So you were asking about vacant positions, budgeted?
Yeah, I'm asking if there's a way we can, factor that in some way so that we don't have to go through and say, well, we're gonna remove one position from this department and one position from this department, because that will equal the difference. Oh, David's got his hand waving. He's got the answer. Go, David.
Okay, Commissioner Scar, can we go to Commissioner Yamamoto then? Okay, go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. And I do want to preface this to Sheriff Brown. Sheriff Brown, this has got nothing to do with your department, but you currently have 17 budgeted positions that are going to be, well, I'm hoping you're going to fill maybe half of them over the next year or two. But we all know that filling your positions in the sheriff's office is almost impossible at this point. So, I will preface this by saying that if indeed some miracle should happen and you are able to hire to your current full capacity, I know this budget committee could meet again in emergency session, or Sean could find the money. But one of the easy ways to resolve this issue is to take even a couple of more positions out of the sheriff's office, knowing that we're doing it strictly to balance this budget, knowing full well also that, again, in some way, if you are able to hire additional people, we will find a way to do that. And Sean, I'm going to need your backup on this.
Mr. Scar, you still have your hand up. Did you want? You're done, okay. Then question then is flipped over to our treasurer from Commissioner Yamamoto. Can you respond to his question?
Yes. So thanks for transferring it to me. There has been quite a bit of savings. There are currently, what I had, which was effective probably about 2 weeks ago, 32 positions in the general fund that we're budgeting for but are open. And the majority of those come out of the sheriff's office. And I think Sheriff Brown can probably speak more to the hiring climate if you'd like to give him a chance to do that. I always find a way to find the money, Commissioner Yamamoto. Whether it's by not doing a bigger project, holding a project off for another year, working with other departments, working with revenues, one-time revenues that come in. But as far as the hiring mentality, or what's the word I'm looking for? Environment, I'll let Sheriff Brown speak to that.
Sheriff Brown, I see you're online. You came up. Would you care to speak to that, please?
I will do my best. So what I can say is that what David and Sean are saying about the likelihood of us filling all of those positions is pretty accurate. I am probably 99.99% certain that we will not fill all those positions in a year. And I'm basing that not on opinion, I'm basing that on current trends, I'm basing that on current hiring. If by some miracle we end up just having an absolute influx, it would completely surprise me, and I would absolutely be coming back to this board. it absolutely scares me to no end to say we're gonna cut 3 positions, because we cut 3 positions, then I gotta beg to get them back. So I would hope that as this committee is sitting here, as we're having this conversation, you know, Aaron, I think that your question about is there a way we can just temporarily drop them, and, you know, Sean, I'm certain has the answer for it, and that may not be possible, but just temporarily saying these positions are here, but they're not going to be filled, so we're going to, you know, zero budget. It would be far easier to just take it off of ours, and it would be 1 position from us, 1 position from here, 1 position from here. I understand that, and I want to be a team player. Boy, it scares me, though, to cut a position. So I really hope that there's a caveat that everybody understands that this is for the betterment of the county, and that, you know, those are positions we can't afford to lose, but the reality is we can't fill them, and the likelihood is that we won't fill them in the next year. So take that for what it's worth. With my fingers crossed that you guys got my back and those positions can come back when the time is right. If there is a way, and Sean, maybe there is no feasible way to do it, to say that they're still there and they still exist, but we're zeroing that money, that dollar amount out so that it can be budgeted. That'd make me feel a little bit better. But I think this budget committee kind of understands where I'm coming from, and my hope is that maintains. So that's my 2 cents.
Sheriff, I appreciate that very much. You're taking you're taking a great position here. We're all in for the county. I think we know the realities, and I appreciate you expounding upon that with us. But yeah, I think we've got your back. If at some point in the near future, if this needs to come back, it will come back. Hopefully with more, but. Right now, it is a budget reality.
Well, and if I felt strongly that I was going to fill the 15 plus positions that I have open right now in the next year, I might be saying a different tune. But there is an absolute reality to this. I get that, and like I said, it's a scary prospect, but I understand, and you know, I believe I've got a good relationship with all 3 commissioners, and I believe I have a good relationship with the budget committee, and I would really hope that it's just kind of where we're at.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you. Mr. Scars, go back to you, and then I want to ask Mr. Scott, Mayor Scott, I haven't heard from him yet. I'd ask him to offer
I got my hand up.
Mr. Scars, go ahead, you have your hand up.
Sure. Thank you, no, and I want to thank the Sheriff for his willingness to work with us on this. And I don't know if there's a way to do it so that these 15 positions are perhaps budgeted for 3/4 of the year, something which puts a placeholder in there that indicates the position is still there. It's just that we are not expecting to fill them until further into the year. And if there's a way that just provides a little bit better sense of we value the position, we are budgeting for the reality. But I think this is also a great opportunity for the conversation that I think we have to have in the coming year and beyond, which is that I, in my years again on the budget committee and now as a commissioner, it feels as if there are 1 or 2 positions at the county that we are constantly stealing from one department to give to another department because we don't have enough money to fully fund any department as it should really be funded. So we are making a choice now to balance the budget upon the backs of vacant positions, which we have the opportunity to do this year. And it's not a great opportunity. It's not how we would like to balance the budget of the county. We would like to have the full staff needed to offer the full services needed. I see Tassie has her hand up. I know that she is one of those who had that position taken away a few years ago, so we could give it to somebody else who was under greater pressure from the public at that time. So we don't have a long-term answer, and I think that always has to be a part of our conversation here, that we as county commissioners and budget committee members and department heads and the community at large will all need to be in conversation about our tax rate, our levies, the bonds that we use, how we fund our government, and the fact that we are coming up to a very, I've been talking about this cliff since I started 5 years ago in the budget world here, but we get closer to it every year. And if it weren't for the vacant positions, I think we would be peering over the edge at it this year. So it's just an awareness for everyone to have. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Mayor Scott, did you want to weigh in on this? We haven't heard from you much
Yes.
yet today.
Yes, can you guys hear me? The speaker's a little bit far away, so I'll speak as loud as I can. We're trying to do an accounting exercise here to come up with $200,000 roughly. I'm not too excited about taking it all from the sheriff's department. You got other issues here. You got perception issues in the community. You got morale issues within that department. It look like that we're taking away more than one position. In this case, we're talking about 3, I guess. I just don't think that's good for the sheriff's department right now because they're trying to recruit. I know the sheriff wants to look like, well, he is. He's open for business. He needs good people. And I just said, even though we're doing an accounting exercise here, I just think it's a bad perception. And that goes, I think, the sheriff is an elected position, I believe also. If we do a market rate adjustment to his pay, when we're trying to find new officers, I know this is a complicated issue, but I'm a little reluctant to recommend making a market rate adjustment up on the sheriff's salary when we're desperately trying to be competitive with officer salaries and recruit people. So that's my comment on that. Let me make a comment about Gordon. Gordon's a great guy, but he retired. He moved out of the county. He does a great weather report. I would hope that he could continue his weather reports down here on some sort of subscription basis online. People wanted to get his weather. You could pay a small fee and you could be included in his program. And people that really like his weather forecast can pay a little bit and get it from him. He's not working for the county anymore. He's a private citizen. He could set that up. So that's kind of my solution to that. I guess that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's go over to Tassie. You've got your hand up. Go ahead, Tassie.
Hi, Cassie O'Neill, Tacoma County Clerk. So I'm just sitting here listening to the conversation, and there's a lot of good points that are being mentioned, and I really appreciate what Aaron had commented that there was a position cut from the county clerk's office a couple of years ago, and we haven't received that back, and it's been very difficult without that position. And it's speaking of what Mike said for morale issues, that is a concern for the sheriff's office. Absolutely, it's a concern for the other departments as well for morale issues when you lose a staff member and other departments gain them. But I just want to, I don't know. I know that within this last budget year there was some shifting because the sheriff's office has had issues with the hiring process. Everyone's having that, which it's worse for the sheriffs. I totally understand. But I know there was some shifting from the different positions to where there were corrections technicians and different things like that. And I guess even though I've been trying to track and gone to meetings, I guess I'm hopeful to maybe maybe get a discussion, because I'm looking at the proposed budget. Was there how many FTEs are there that were adopted last year, and what are we into now and what's proposed? I guess I'm unclear on that, so that was one of my questions. And of course, I just want to say for the record too, that we, as Aaron mentioned, that we're a team, and the Cliff is out there. We are all a team, and everything. And I mean this, as and I'll speak more in terms of the general fund. And many of you have heard me say this probably a million times. But we are all a team. It's if the surveyor's office records a plat, they need the community development help in signing off on that, and those are accounts that are added to them. It's also then added to the tax and assessment office. The clerk's office records them. It's added to then what documents are recorded. That might add roads to the road department. It also adds whatever workload each of those departments has in the monies that get handled through the treasurer's office, and whatever the HR department has to hire. And if we don't have the IT department backing us in making sure our equipment is working, in whatever money is collected by the tax and assessment office or the general fund, when all of those in that team I just talked about, to collect those funds for, for taxes that we we have and to distribute through the treasurer's office and give money to the sheriff's office, that's included in the general fund. I just want to remind you, we are a team and it affects us all. So I just wanted to remind everyone of that. And I was just curious with the shuffling of the creative thinking from, to the correction text. I just am, and I've been paying attention, but kind of swamped with elections and short-staffed and trying to figure out where the sheriff's, how many FTEs there is for sure at this point. I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you, Cassie. Commissioner Bartline, former Commissioner Bartline has his hand up. Let's go to him and then we'll come over to Commissioner Yamamoto.
Okay, so as much as I support the rainy day, not the rainy day fund, the reserve fund, or whatever we want to call that,
Revenue
it did
stabilization.
get increased from $500,000 to $1 million. If we could take about 175 off of that, drop it down to 825, we wouldn't have to make the cuts in the sheriff's office. And then if those positions don't get hired and that funding is there at year end, you could do a resolution changing that back to $1 million or $1.5 million. You have the authority to do that. So rather than putting money away in the rainy day fund, which we can do anyway if we don't hire the people, I mean, it's just maneuvering the budget to make it so that you don't have to cut positions. And realistically, if the sheriff got even 70% of those people hired on this next year, it would be a phenomenal thing, but it would still leave a whole bunch of money sitting there that could then be transferred to the rainy day fund. Just kind of the old, I mean, we're just playing kind of a hat game or a money game of moving it here or there, but it still would work.
I like that idea.
Commissioner Yamamoto? Oh, you're muted, Commissioner. You need to unmute.
Sorry. This is going to be totally off topic here, but we need to take a quick recess. We need to bring on a Board of Commissioners meeting. We have a time certain public hearing. This will take us like 3 minutes.
Okay, and are you on schedule? Can you do that now?
Yes.
Okay, then let's, right, showing 2:13. Why don't we take a recess and we will reconvene at 2:20.